Welcome to Cultural Quarter of an Hour with me, Charlotte Foster. This is a podcast all about Stoke-on-Trent and North Staffordshire. We are unashamedly positive about the area and we unashamedly sing this area's praises. We do this by looking at the area's culture. Now, this can be anything from events that are taking place, history of the area, but most importantly, it is the people. Welcome to this week's episode of Cultural Quarter of an Hour. Now, this week was not planned at all. Well, I say this week was planned, of course it was, but this episode has come out of a lucky coincidence, a lucky meeting. I don't know. Not long ago, I was at the opening for Dust Rising. It's one of the early episodes of the podcast. Go back and listen to it if you haven't listened to it already. And there was Morris, who I know from my days back on the radio. And also, you'll have heard him on at least one podcast. He was on the Pride podcast. And we were talking, just catching up, and said goodbye. And as I was walking out of the Dust Rising exhibition, Morris came around the corner all excited and said, Charlotte, I found someone who is perfect for your podcast. Fantastic. Obviously this is at the Spode factory site, the old Spode Works, and as well as having the sort of the first full day of opening for the BCB, the Dust Rising exhibition, it was also the open day for the Akava studios that are there. And Morris led me to Mel, who is also known, well, I'll let Mel tell you who he is.
Job title? I don't know. Right, let me try and break this down. I'm a person who teaches scenic model making on YouTube. So I'm not sure if that makes me an artist, a model maker, or a content creator. But I'm all three.
That sounds good to me. And I've come into your workshop. I've been dragged in here. But
on Studio Open Day?
Yeah, Studio Open Day, and sort of discovered you. And I'm fascinated just looking around. What did I say? I came in and I went, this looks like a fun workshop. And you said, yes, it is. So tell me, what goes on?
Well, I mean, I teach model making for playing games, so it's all about fun and game playing. But I mean, obviously there is the business and the work side and, you know, the practical side, which is the model making. Model making, because it's based around gameplay, and gameplay can be historic, it can be fantasy, it can be sci-fi, it can be set in the past, it can be set in the future, it can be set on other planets. What I make varies so greatly that I have a wide range of building materials, and I'm known as the tool shop for the studios, because if someone needs a tool, there's a good chance I will have it. You know, because obviously I've got the building side, I've got the painting side, you've got the varnishing side, you've got resin work for doing water stuff such as rivers, oceans, lakes. On top of that, you've got casting and model making and mold making for making like window frames and all that sort of stuff. And so my practice covers a lot of artistic disciplines. And so it's just ram-packed full of toys, models, and materials and tools in here.
How did you get started then? And I appreciate that's probably a very big question.
Oh, that was down to my mother. My mother is a woman who can turn herself to any craft. She was a single mum back when I was a child living in North Wales. And at the time, she had a craft shop. And so being a single mum and not being able to afford childcare, I spent pretty much every summer living in a craft shop. And when you live in a craft shop and your mother makes products to sell, so do you. Yeah, if you're old enough to twist wire, you make wire armatures for jewellery trees and gem trees that were the craze back then. Yeah, and now I make wire armatures for model trees. So I started when I was 5. I started in the little shop, and the old guys used to run the, railway set-outs. They used to come in because my mother had a small collection of scenic supplies for them. And they used to make me make dioramas for my little toy plastic soldier men and my action men. And it just grew from there. When I came back to England back when I was 15 in 1990, I discovered there was an actual proper game called Warhammer. I got into that. I spent a good probably about 5 years getting into that before I discovered beer, alcohol, women, and the army. Yeah, late 20s, I discovered stress and came back into the hobby as a way of finding it. By the time I'd hit my late 30s, I'd got burnt out from medical sales because I'm a physiotherapist by trade. That's what I trained to do after I finished being a medic in the army. And I was doing medical sales. I got burnt out. I had a little bit of a breakdown, decided I was going to run away to my hobby and teach people how to make models on YouTube for a living. And when the wife said, "Can you do that?" I said, "I can try." And 5 years later, here I am.
So people can find you on YouTube, showing everyone how to make models. Yeah,
I've got a channel on YouTube. It goes by the Terrain Tutor. It's a tutorial-based channel, so it's a learning-based channel. I've got, I think, about 125,000 subscribers, so, it's got a reasonable base. Financially, I'm supported by about 600 patrons. So about 600 people around the world sign on to a website called Patreon, and they give me a monthly wage. They donate a monthly wage in return for supporting the videos and me helping them and that sort of stuff. And so, basically I'm employed by my community to help them with their hobby.
How does that feel? You've gone from a background of army and medics.
Brilliant. No, to cut the swear language out, which you could probably hear, that was an effing brilliant, to be perfectly honest. There is no greater feeling, because not only do you get, I came to this as, with mental health issues. I had depression, I had anxiety, I had really low self-esteem. And so the reinforcement you get from people saying, "You've really helped me with this," it really helps you as a person sort of heal and get better. And then their financial support saying, "You're really helping me, you've saved me money, here's a couple of quid." I get donations from people, and it varies. I can get £5 because someone spent a couple of hours watching my videos and I've helped them. In the past, I can have £500 appear in my bank overnight with the same comment. Yeah, because people's disposable income varies depending on how much money they earn. Yeah, but it's just wonderful. I work for my community, and what I do is I help them make better models that let them have better games with their friends and have better times. As rewarding jobs go, it doesn't get much more reward. Physiotherapy was rewarding. Seeing a patient jump off a couch, prepare themselves mentally for pain, and then look puzzled why they don't hurt anymore until the realization that I'm pain-free, my back doesn't hurt. That's incredibly rewarding. People you've never met in different parts of the world sending you money because you've helped them with their hobby, or you've helped them getting a child's homework project done. Yeah, that's real rewarding. Forgetting the monetary side, just the message. And so, it's a wonderful job to do, to be perfectly honest. It's the best job I've ever had.
It does sound quite varied when you say it goes from everything from, people's the big the Warhammer game kind of terrains to just a child's homework as well. Yeah,
and it's not just that. It's arts and crafts. I did a video a while ago just on how to use DAS modelling clay, because I have a series, a playlist called Back to Basics. And what I'll do is I'll pick a material and I'll focus on all the different techniques you can use on that material. And I'm gearing it to, look, this is how we're going to make models out of it. I did one on DAS model clay, and now I have an influx. I think my channel is 3% jewellery makers as well, who have no interest in anything else but the little things that are relevant to their craft. And because it's art and it crosses over, it is so varied. And the videos I end up watching, if I need to learn about resin, it's very rarely I'm watching scenic model making videos. I'm watching the guys who are doing the resin effects and the lacing and that sort of stuff, and seeing how I could take those techniques and apply them to my discipline. And so, if you factor in the technology side of YouTube, and video production, 4K production, podcasting, then you factor in the convention side, traveling over to the States for conventions over there, doing workshops, then you factor in film production side in the studio, and then you factor in the actual model making, then you factor in the gaming industry, all the genres, the different games. it couldn't be more varied. And the directions it takes you in are bizarre at times. The places you end up learning. I mean, I understand plant biology, so I can understand why leaves go from yellowy green to full green to reddy browns through the year. And it's down to the type of chemicals that are in them and how that affects them. Why fir trees are dark green all year. Because it has a different type of chlorophyll in it. Chlorophyll alpha and chlorophyll beta. But in learning why these things are, so you can understand when I need to apply them on a piece. Because it's not just about getting the colour right, it's about ensuring that the colour is right in the composition and the placement. For example, sun leaves, which have a type of chlorophyll which is more energy demanding but more productive, are only placed on the most sunny parts of a tree. So if you place them in the shade, you completely ruin the look. And there's a biological mechanism, a survival mechanism from evolution, where we are naturally geared to look at anything in nature that is wrong. So whenever you see a rock or a tree that's grown wrong, you're immediately drawn to it with unease. Because we're biological, it's an instinct, it's a survival instinct from when we were on the Serengeti, where we were looking for things in bushes that jumped out on us. And so you have to battle that mechanism when doing scenic model making. Because if you put a bush in a place it wouldn't really be, it kicks in that same feeling of unease. So it's not just about the colours or where things grow, it's also understanding that it would go like that, water flows like that, rocks crumble like that, and if you get it wrong, it doesn't look right, and it really doesn't look right. So it takes you to learning geology. I mean, I know why lava has a purple tint or a green tint, and why there's purple obsidian, because I need to understand where these colours come from and where they need to be applied. So I understand, it's caused by different chemicals in the magma getting crystallised during the eruption. And green volcanic glass, if you've never seen green volcanic glass, there's nothing more beautiful on this planet. But it just takes you off in tangents. 1 minute I'm learning about geology, the next minute I'm learning about 4K video editing. And I'm a model maker, which has nothing to do with either of those.
I'm just trying to imagine you aged 5 in the craft shop to now, the growth, the journey that you've been on. And if at 5, playing around there, did you ever in any point imagine that it would be this kind of place that you would be in?
Because my career was never going that way. I mean, I was supposed to be a doctor, because by trade my mum's a nurse, and I come from a family of doctors, or medical professionals. So I was supposed to end up in medicine, and that's why I ended up in physiotherapy. But I joined the army instead of going to medical school, which probably didn't work out that well. So my career path was never arts or modelling. It was always a hobby. The reason I ended up here was because I had a nervous breakdown and I needed something to do. And the hobby was always something I could retreat into and made me feel good, like most hobbies do. And also with it being the arts is good when it comes to mental health. Being creative is good. Also, nature is good. So being a scenic model maker is a double tag, if you get what I mean, because you're constantly dealing with green and nature, which is relaxing and reassuring. Plus you're doing creative activities, which even if you cock it up, it's still good for the mental health. And so, there was never any plan to do this at all. And it only became apparent after everything else had fallen apart. And I think that's true of most life. You do what you think you were supposed to do until everything falls apart, and you actually get that sort of restart where you actually get to make a decision as an adult who knows the world and actually knows what they're interested in. I mean, my lad, he's coming up to, he's in his 4th year. God knows what that means in modern terms, but next year he'll be doing his GCSEs, which means he needs to start to choose his A-levels, so start to think about degrees. And I'm sitting there and I'm having to have conversations with him, and I'm having conversations knowing full well I have no idea what you're going to want to end up doing, and to be perfectly honest, I know full well neither do you. So let's just find you something reliable for a decade or two until you can figure out what you really want to do with your life, And so there is no planning for this. You know, I mean, I can understand you planning to go into the arts, but become teaching model making on YouTube. Who the hell plans for that?
Who goes to their careers advisor? Yes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to show everyone how to make models of terrain.
They do actually say that being a YouTuber or being an Amazon influencer is the number one career for young people nowadays, because it's what they see. They're on YouTube. You know, the younger people are the biggest consumers of social media and digital technology. You know, the biggest adopters, and so they see it as a career path. And I'm constantly being approached by people, how do you do it? You know, and I always say, you just got to have a passion and throw things at the wall until they stick. But it is seen as a career now, when, as you know, you got to remember, when I was 5, the internet didn't exist. You know, I was in primary school. I was 9 when I got my first Acorn Electron computer. And my signature in my email takes up more memory than that had. You know, so there was no perception of, do you want to do this? And what's there going to be in another 10, 20 years? You know, for these Amazon influencers who want to be who knows if, you know, influencer, it's going to be a thing. Who knows how we're going to, I mean, we've got virtual reality, augmented reality just around the corner. I mean, that's going to change the gaming industry, because our game tables will be digitally generated through augmented reality. Theoretically, it'll make me completely redundant.
Do you think that will happen, or do you think people will still want that physical to be able to touch?
I think, and from experience, there's a lot of people who come this for the game but stay for the hobby. And I think the fact that model making, I mean, I'm still using techniques that were used in 90s, 50s filmmaking. Yeah. And I'm still using those techniques. They're never going to die, because model making is never going to die, because people are always going to want to do model making. People are always going to want to do creativity. Whether it's used for gaming, I don't know. Whether it's used for some other application, or whether it's just used purely as a hobby, you know, in a digital world, because if augmented reality replaces gaming, we're living in a highly augmented world. Yeah, and so I think there'll be a kickback to the tangible, to the creative, yeah, as a way of connecting with nature and connecting with reality. Yeah, and so no, I don't think it'll ever disappear. I just think, like as always, it'll just change.
So sitting here in your workshop, you've got tools all over the wall.
I've got tools all over one wall.
That's the wall.
Yeah, that's because that's also a backdrop to the videos, so it makes a good set. Yeah, which is why there's foam swords, machine guns, and an inflatable cannon shell on there as well.
I did want to go and say, well, what? Yeah. We are here. Yeah. It looks fabulous, but all around me are, I'm guessing, some of the things that you've made as well.
Yeah. There's pieces. I mean, if we split the room up, then the back wall is my most common tools and materials, so that they look good on the videos as a backdrop, but also they're easy to grab. So anything on there is stuff I use. If we go to the next wall that's beside me, these are all my common materials. So all the materials I commonly use, all my paints, my adhesives, my more specialist paints, my even more specialist paints, my scrap materials for little bits and bobs that I don't want to hit the big shells for. And then my spray cans. Across here, you've got your resins, your industrial glues, your fillers, your stuccos, your PVAs, your house paints. Because we use a lot of house paints because of the size of the pieces. It's more cost effective than doing it with artist acrylics. So artist acrylics we use to make washes and tints and effects from. Yeah, but the actual bulk painting is done in house paints. You know, emulsions. If we move further across, then we have a bank of technology that is to enable me to live stream. Then if we move to the back, we've got general storage, and this is where pieces, I call that the tutorial wall, because once a piece has been made, it basically goes on there to become an experiment for me to play with in the future. I generally don't have any finished pieces, big pieces, because the pieces I have always go out to, always go out to commissions. So they're often built and I don't get to keep that stuff. And so that wall is just full of, well, let's see now. We've got a beach scene at the back. We've got an iceberg there. We've got the White Cliffs of Dover there. We've got a Normandy Point halfway through there. We've got a load of rock work and base work for my book that I'm working on. Underneath, we've got doormats to make hedges from. We've got teddy bear fur to make thatch and fields from. We've got big sheets of industrial insulation that we'll carve hills from. And then moving across, you've literally just got kits, resin bits, aquarium pieces, 3D prints, bits that are built, bits that are half built. On the top, you've got, there's a box up there that's got grass written on it, which will have grass in it. There's another box which underneath it has horsehair, which will have rubberized coconut fibre, which is an upholstery material that we use for making hedges and trees. If you go to that final wall, we've got my display cabinet, which is more of a bookshelf at the minute. And then my Mr. Maker wall with palm trees, spare bottles, airbrushing, bits and kits, basing, adhesive, water effects, scatter, lichen, Burma build, casting, abrasives, power tools, scratch, plastic, flocking, plastic plants, flock box, garnish, brushes and pots, water effects, adhesives, fine acrylics and cheap acrylics and scrap paints, and that's just half of them labelled. And then you've got the door and the kettle.
The kettle is important.
It is highly important. My brew station is the key. Chocolate, sugar, coffee, I'm good.
So I kind of already sort of touched on it a little bit. This is the present. We've had the past. What's the future?
I had no idea.
And do you like that way?
Yeah. Screw it. I haven't got a clue. Yeah. For example, okay, in April, I did a Kickstarter for a book. Yeah, with a mate of mine called Dave Taylor Miniatures, guy who lives over in the States. Yeah, good friend of mine from the industry, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It sold over 5,000 copies in 30 days and raised $250,000, yeah, in gross sales. That book was agreed to the year before because I went to a show in London. He got me drunk the night before. Yeah, I woke up the next day with a friend I was sharing a room with who told me I'd agreed to do a modelling book with Dave. Yeah, I went down to the show to find him and say, did I agree to do a modelling book with you? And he went, yeah. I said, great, that's a great idea, let's do it. Yeah, that's the way this whole thing is rolling. Yeah, I have no plans because life has taught me it doesn't matter what your plans are, God will just laugh at you. Yeah, so you're better off just getting a firm base, a rough direction in roughly where you want to go, and just start putting feet in front of each other and take the path that comes along.
Thank you so much to Mel, and thank you so much to Morris for thinking of me. Mel was talking to me as well. I genuinely love it when you guys tell me who I should be interviewing, who I should be talking to, because I don't know everyone, as I'd love to. And that's kind of what the podcast is about as well, going and finding people. But it's great that you get it as well. I love that you understand what this podcast is about. So thank you to everyone for getting involved. If you want to get involved, tell me who I should be speaking to, then just give me a shout. You can give me a message on Twitter and Facebook. Social media is the easiest way of doing it. If you just go to Twitter at CQHpod, Facebook, Cultural Quarter of an Hour Podcast, you'll find me there. Get in touch, let me know what's going on, and I will always do my best to find these things out. Thank you for listening. I'll be back next week.